You're alive, Fezzik cried. The man in black sat immobile like a ventriloquist dummy, just his mouth moving. That is perhaps the most childishly obvious remark I have ever come across, but what can you expect from a strangler? Why won't my arms move? You've been dead, Inigo explained. And we're not strangling you, Fezzik said. We were just getting the pill down. The resurrection pill. I bought it from Miracle Max and it works for 60 minutes. What happens after 60 minutes? Do I die again? It wasn't 60 minutes, he just thought it was. Actually, it was 40, only they'd used up one already in conversation, so it was down to 39. We don't know. Probably you just collapse and need tending for a year or however long it takes to get your strength back. I wish I could remember what it was like when I was dead, the man in black said. I'd write it all down. I could make a fortune on a book like that. I can't move my legs either. That will come. He's supposed to. Max said the tongue and the brain were shoe-ins, and probably you'll be able to move, but slowly. The last thing I remember was dying. So why am I on this wall? Are we enemies? Have you got names? I'm the Dread Pirate Roberts, but you can call me Wesley. Fezzik, Inigo Montoya of Spain. Let me tell you what's been going on. He stopped and shook his head. No, he said, there's too much. It would take too long. Let me distill it for you. The wedding is at 6, which leaves us probably now something over a half an hour to get in, steal the girl, and get out. But not before I kill Count Rugen. What are our liabilities? There is but one working castle gate, and it is guarded by perhaps 100 men. Wesley said, not as unhappy as he might have been ordinarily, because just then he began to be able to wiggle his toes. And our assets? Your brains, Fezzik's strength, my steel. Wesley stopped wiggling his toes. That's all. That's it. Everything. The grand total. Inigo tried to explain. We've been operating under a terrible time pressure from the very beginning. Just yesterday morning, for example, I was a hopeless drunk and Fezzik toiled for the brute squad. It's impossible, Wesley cried. I am Inigo Montoya and I do not accept defeat. You will think of something. I have complete confidence in you. She's going to marry Humperdinck, and I'm helpless, Wesley said in blind despair. Lay me down again. Leave me alone. You're giving in too easily. We fought monsters to reach you. We risked everything because you had the brains to conquer problems. I have complete and absolute total confidence that you... I want to die, Wesley said and closed his eyes. If I had a month to plan, maybe I might be able to come up with something, but this... His head rocked from side to side. I'm sorry. Leave me. You just moved your own head, Fezzik said, doing his best to be cheery. Doesn't that up your spirits? My brains, your strength, and his steel against 100 troops. And you think a little head jiggle is supposed to make me happy. Why didn't you leave me to death? This is worse. Lying here helpless while my true love marries my murderer. I know once you're over your emotional outbursts, you'll come up with... If we even had a wheelbarrow, that would be something, Wesley said. Where do we put that wheelbarrow the albino had? Inigo asked. Over by the albino, I think, Fezzik replied. Maybe we can get a wheelbarrow, Inigo said. Well, why didn't you list that among our assets in the first place, Wesley said, sitting up and staring out at the massed troops in the distance. You just sat up, Fezzik said, still trying to be cheery. Wesley continued to stare at the troops and the incline leading down toward them. He shook his head. What I'd give for a Holocaust cloak, he said just then. There, we can't help you, Inigo said. Will this do? Fezzik wondered, pulling out his Holocaust cloak. Where? Inigo began. From Miracle Max. It fit me so nice he let me keep it. Wesley got to his feet then. All right, I'll need a sword eventually. Why? Inigo asked. You can barely lift one. True, Wesley agreed, but that is hardly common knowledge. Hear me now. There may be problems once we're inside. I'll say there may be problems, Inigo cut in. How do we stop the wedding? Once we do, how do I find the Count? Once I do, where will I find you again? Once we're together, how do we escape? Once we escape, don't pester him with so many questions, Fezzik said. Take it easy. He's been dead. Right, sorry, Inigo said. The man in black was moving very slowly now along the top of the wall, by himself. Fezzik and Inigo followed him through the darkness in the direction of the wheelbarrow. There was no denying the fact that there was a certain excitement in the air. Buttercup, for her part, felt no excitement whatsoever. She had, in fact, never remembered such a wonderful feeling of calm. Her Wesley was coming. That was her world. Ever since the prince had dragged her to her room, she had spent their intervening hours thinking of ways to make Wesley happy. There was no way he could miss stopping her wedding. That was the only thought that could survive the trip across her conscious mind. So when she heard the wedding was to be moved up, she wasn't the least upset. Wesley was always prepared for contingencies, and if he could rescue her at 6, he could just as happily rescue her at 5:30. Actually, Prince Humperdinck got things going even faster than he had hoped. It was 5:23 when he and his bride-to-be were kneeling before the aged Archdean of Florin. It was 5:24 when the Archdean started to speak, and 5:25 when the screaming started outside the main gate. Buttercup only smiled softly. "Here comes my Wesley now," was all she thought. It was not, in point of fact, her Wesley that was causing the commotion out front. Wesley was doing all he could to simply walk straight down the incline toward the main gate without help. Ahead of him, Inigo struggled with a heavy wheelbarrow. The reason for its weight was that Fezzik stood in it, arms wide, eyes blazing, voice booming in terrible rage. "I am the dread pirate Roberts, and there will be no survivors." He said that over and over, his voice echoing and reverberating as his rage increased. He was standing there, gliding down through the darkness, quite an imposing figure, seeming all in all probably close to 10 feet tall, with a voice to match. But even that was not the cause of the screaming. Yellen, from his position by the gate, was reasonably upset at the roaring giant gliding down toward him through the darkness. Not that he doubted his 100 men could dispatch the giant. The upsetting thing was that, of course, the giant would be aware of that too, and logically, there must be somewhere in the dimness out there any number of giant helpers. Other pirates, anything. Who could tell? Still, his men held together remarkably staunchly. It was only when the giant got halfway down the incline that he suddenly, happily burst into flame and continued his trip saying, "No survivors! No survivors!" in a manner that could only indicate deadly sincerity. It was seeing him happily burning and advancing that started the brute squad to screaming. And once that happened, why, everybody panicked and ran.